Hello everyone. Today I am here with another Unchained video, and this time I want to talk more in depth about different tech cards and engines that you guys can play once these cards come out in the TCG and Master Duel, I suppose. So, before we get started, I want to actually first talk about what's going on in the OCG in terms of Unchained. So, right now, we just had I think last week, the OCG ban list that kind of hit the Toon FTK decks. So if you look at the OCG at the moment, they have three top tier decks from what I could notice. They have Branded, Cool, and Toons kind of dominating the metagame. Unchained, however, has seen some play. It's not dead, it's not a failure, it has seen some play. There has been not that many, but there has been some top slots in the OCG metagame, and that does solidify the deck to be more of a rogue deck, maybe even a tier 2 rogue deck, where you can take it and potentially do good, but it's not the deck that I wanted it to be. It's not exactly the power ceiling what I wanted, to be like a top tier contender. But I do believe a lot of that comes down to the philosophy of the deck that people are trying to do with it, because a lot of the time when I see topping decks from the OCG, they're always playing cards like the Fiendsmith Engine, and I feel like the deck has evolved beyond the Fiendsmith Engine, because if you look at those decks, they're usually playing more than 40, or they're trying to keep it as low as 40, but they are giving out engine cards and non-engine cards out of the deck just so they can play the Fiendsmith cards. So a lot of them have like 9 to 10 hand traps, not that many. They don't have any room for side decking, and a lot of the times, because you are playing the Fiendsmith, you are more susceptible to hand traps. You have the power ceiling that the pure doesn't have, but you also lack on the versatility. And when it comes down to Yu-Gi-Oh, especially in like a major tournament, versatility usually wins above power, because you can have like your pile of combo, 5 Omni Negates. That could only get you so far, when in a big tournament what you want to see is consistency. So the deck does have consistency, but when you add engines like the Fiendsmith, you are taking away from that consistency, right? You're taking away your Aruja. I've seen people play 2-1 Aruja, and I just think that's not the right way to play the deck, because if you're removing this card, you're just removing your consistency, right? You're not getting the plays you want to see in your games. And again, you guys can play however you guys want the deck with. You can make the Fiendsmith version work, right? Like, it's not like it's a bad version of the deck. It just, in a long tournament, if it's not like a local, you are probably not going to see as much success as a pure version, even though the pure version is in fact weaker in terms of the ceiling, but it's just more consistent. It works, it plays better through more hand traps as well. But in any case, you guys can notice here, I've also taken away Syncretism from the deck. Syncretism here, I've noticed that it's not really the greatest card that I once thought it was. I know when I first read this, I thought, man, this is a great piece of interruption, of removal. But then the more I sat down on it, the more I thought about it, the more I kind of came to the conclusion that it really isn't that much better than Escape. Escape, in my opinion, is still way better, because it could actually target spells and traps, as well as you don't need it Unchained Link monster to utilize with. You can use any of the effect monster from the main deck and the link monsters, not just pure link monsters. So I did decided to take it out and kind of have an empty slot here for now, because in this video I am going to showcase different tech cards that you can utilize, and as an example, I am using the turn 0 version of the deck that I showcased in my last video. So if you have any questions on how the deck works and all the different combos, you can look at my previous videos. The first one I made has a bunch of combos. The second one kind of talks more with the newer cards, and then the third video that I made has 3 different deck profile for you guys to check out. But in this video, I am going to showcase with the turn 0 because there are a lot of really cool things that you can do with it, utilizing different tech cards. So for now, I'm just going to get started. Again, in the OCG, Unchained is more of a tier 2. And oh yeah, before I actually move on, I do need to kind of specify like why I think Unchained hasn't seen as much of a success as the other decks. And I think it comes down to 2 reasons. I think the first one is that people are not giving this deck like different opportunities to shine with different cards in that the deck profiles are not constructed very well. Back to what I was saying, you know, my big complaint when I was looking at some of the OCG decks is that they were taking away engine cards for like say Fiendsmith or like other kind of cards, not just those. They were like mix and matching, trying to make Unchained, you know, a better deck. But a lot of the times you see them, they're removing hand traps, they're removing non-engine, they're removing things that they shouldn't. I wouldn't do, I would say. So I do believe the philosophy is very different, and also because they're in the OCG, right? And the OCG has a very distinct ban list compared to what Master Duel and the TCG has. So you know, part of that can come from that. And I think the second part that I believe this deck is not seeing as much success is because of how technical the deck is. The deck, in my previous video I mentioned, it is a very technical heavy deck. You need to really understand the game, really understand the damage step, and really understand interactions as well. Because this deck will punish you if you are not careful on how to resolve your effects and what to activate against different decks. And that basically means that you need to put a lot of time into a deck like this so you can be successful with it. And for a lot of the other decks that are currently, you know, in the top tier, like Tunes, Branded, and Cool Tuned, not to say they're easy decks, but the level of entry for those decks is lower than Unchained. Like those decks has those, you know, it's easy to get into but hard to master. But Unchained is one of those, it's hard to get in and hard to master. So when you look at competitive players, they might be thinking, okay, this deck could be really hard to get into, really hard to master. Why would I put, you know, my 50 hours, you know, in a week into a deck that's gonna take me that long, where I could just take an easier deck to learn and do more with it with less amount of time. So I do believe that it is an issue, but those who actually stick with Unchained, I feel they're gonna find a lot of success with it because the deck is not bad at all. It's still a really good, strong deck. You just need the right formula and the right player to make this deck really shine. And that's just my honest opinions on the current meta and, you know, where I see this deck standing. I do believe like once it comes in a TCG and in Master Duel, we're gonna get a lot more people playtesting the deck and understanding its strengths and weaknesses, and I can see people actually being very successful. Hopefully, once the cards do come out in the TCG and in Master Duel. But in any case, let's just go ahead and get started with these tech cards now, right? So the first tech card I want to talk about is Multiplying Kuriboh. I did talk about this and I did showcase it in my last video, but I have some change of thoughts since then. Multiplying Kuriboh is not the way to go. I really don't think this card is the best card in a deck like this, and a lot of it comes down because of its activation conditions. Multiplying Kuriboh, if you don't know, I'm just going to TLDR these effects because, you know, the only thing you really need to worry about is like when your opponent activates a monster effect, you get to summon this from the hand, and then when your opponent activates another monster effect on the field, you get to summon a Kuriboh from the deck or a Dark Magician, but you're just gonna use a Kuriboh in this scenario with detonating Kuriboh. And then when your opponent activates an additional monster effect in the field, you get to basically target that monster and equip it with this card to this card. Or no, equip this card to that card, and then the effects are negated. So this, at the beginning, I thought was a really interesting card to play around with, because it also combos well with Ogre Shara. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, in my first video that I made with combos, you could actually do a full combo if you just have Shara plus any fiend in the game, plus one of your spells on traps. You can do a full combo, and like when I saw Multiplying Kuriboh, I thought, okay, At the worst case scenario, I could use Multiplying Kuriboh to do Unchained combos. But then, once you start like looking at the card, when you start playtesting more, you start to realize that Multiplying Kuriboh is just too slow of a card. There may be effects that you want to negate earlier than 3 effects activations, and Multiplying Kuriboh cannot disrupt those cards because you need to wait for your opponent to activate a monster effect, then another monster effect, then a third monster effect before you get your negate. And the thing that this doesn't match well with are cards like Ash Blossom, for example, because both of their activation conditions is a when effect, meaning they need to respond directly after the card has been activated. And you either kind of have to choose, okay, am I going to activate Ash Blossom in this effect, or am I going to activate Multiplying Kuriboh in this effect? You can't do both, right? You have to choose one or the other. And if you commit to Multiplying Kuriboh, that means every single time you have Ash Blossom, you're just like, man, I wish I could activate this now, but I want to, summon my Multiplying Kuriboh and get my Detonating Kuriboh as soon as possible. So this card here really conflicts in general, right, with any deck. And here in Unchained, it's just too slow. It really is. Sure, it's a fiend, it's a dark, you can utilize it with Dominance Impulse and with Shara, but it just doesn't do it. It doesn't. It's too slow and it's too convoluted of an activation requirement. And for that reason, I honestly take back, my deck profile that I had in my previous video with this card. I just wanted to give it a shot. I kind of wanted to showcase it. But now that I kind of had more time to play with it, more time to think about it, it doesn't fit what we wanted to do. In any case, so that's it for this card. Next, let's go ahead and talk about the next card here. This is the new Emissary from Darkness card that got revealed like 2 weeks ago. So it might be a while before we get this card in the TCG and OCG, but I still think it's good to kind of discuss because this card actually does really well. Like on first glance, it does fantastic in Unchained, because Unchained, if you guys didn't know, does really well when it comes down to board breaking. It's actually a really strong deck when it comes down to it. You can, for example, summon Aruha after your opponent sets up a field. You can run into one of your opponent's monsters and then summon Abominable from deck. So you can do a non-targeting destruction, and then you can swing with them with 3000. And this deck does really good at board breaking just because you can do, you can play in the damage step, which a lot of, a lot of decks and a lot of players don't know like how to play into the damage step. Like right now, Cool Tune, for example, none of their cards play in the damage step, which is fantastic for this deck. This deck could just kill Cool Tunes if you just do that. You summon Aruha, run into something, and next thing you know, you get your effects off with Abominable. It's crazy, it's fun. But in any case, the Gores here, for those of you who don't know, just as a quick, synopsis of it, whenever you take battle damage or effect damage, you get to summon this, gain 2000 life points, and then you can do one or two effects. You can either summon another Emissary from Darkness from the hand, deck, or graveyard, or you can destroy 2 attack position monsters on the field. And then during the end phase, if this card was special summon, you get to set a trap from the graveyard. And all of these effects are really good. Like, I'm sure some of you have seen this card already. Like the trap from setting a trap from grave goes really well because we utilize a lot of trap cards here. The effect to summon from the hand when you take battle damage also is really good in this deck because, again, we have the ability to play in the damage step, and a lot of Unchained players do that too, to break boards. And then the additional effect here to summon either another one of his copy or to destroy 2 face-up attack position monster goes really well also for the deck. And this ability here will trigger on an earlier chain from the destruction of the Unchained. That's just how the damage step works. So after damage calculation, you're essentially going to trigger this first, and then at the end of the damage step, you're going to trigger your Unchained monsters. So no matter which version, whether that's OCG rule sets or TCG rule sets, it's the same window of activation. Because when I first read this, I thought, oh man, you can just chain link them both, right? You can do like chain link 1 Aruga, chain link 2 Emissary, but no, that doesn't work that way. It's actually, you have to activate Emissary of Darkness after damage calculation, and then you gotta activate your Unchained destruction effect at the end of the damage step. That's when they trigger. But in any case, a card like this goes really, really well. The only problem with it, there's two problems. The first one is not a real hand trap, where you can use it during your opponent's turn to disrupt them. It just doesn't work that way. Unless they do something to, burn you for damage, and yeah, you can activate this. Or, during, or when going second, when you have to crash into them, or they, run into you. So a card like this is one of those that it's not an active card. You have to be reactive with it, which does suck because a lot of cards that you want to be proactive with is, your opponent combo cards. You want to disrupt them so they don't get too big for it to be too hard to interrupt. And this card could be negated by cards like Baron the Floor, for example, right? Like you cannot play around those if they were able to summon one and you have your Unchained monsters. Yeah, they have to choose which one to kill, but most likely they're gonna probably kill Emissary of Darkness. But that's just like the first big negative. The second big negative, which I think is probably even bigger, is that Emissary of Darkness here kind of has the same problem that Lightning Storm has. So when you are playing against really good players, a lot of the times they are going to summon their monsters in defense position, unless it's like an Omni Negate like Baron the Floor, or like Link monsters, because they have to be in attack position, right? And a lot of the times, Lightning Storm, it could be useless, right, in certain matchup, because you're like thinking, okay, I side this against my opponent's, Omni board or whatever, or the board, but then they summon all the monsters in defense position, so Lightning Storm is no longer good, and they only have like one Imperm set, right? Like, it just feels like a waste of time, like a waste of card. And Emissary of Darkness here has a very similar dilemma with it, where maybe the monsters you want to destroy are not in attack position, right? Like, for example, something like Herald of the Light, right? You want to kill that while into defense position because it's so weak, but you don't get to do anything because if you attack into it, then you just can't summon this, and even if you're attacking something else, they're gonna negate your effect because they can just negate it with Herald, right? Like, it's just a bit of a trickery there. It's something you kind of have to get used to. And honestly, if you can play this card in your deck without disrupting your hand traps, then I would say this would be a pretty interesting card for sure. It is just one of those things that you really have to really kind of decide for yourself. Do I want this as a board breaker? And if I say yes, then let's go ahead and how can I put this in my deck? Because at the current moment in this version, at the very least, we are playing 12 like hand traps plus the Ogre Shara here in order to us get either a Dark Hole or like a non-targeting pop, right? So in technicality, we are playing 15 hand traps in this version of the deck, but we can always do better. And a card like this, if you wanted to, like, say, remove the multiplying Kuriboh, which, honestly, I most definitely will. You can always have like 3 copies of Emissary of Darkness to kind of make that happen. And then you can add like more hand traps, or like 2 more hand traps, for example, right? That could actually kind of round up the deck. But in any case, so Emissary of Darkness is a really good card. It's just one of those things that you have to be very careful with. And at the end of the day, it may just not be played at all in the deck, to be honest, just because it's not something that could be used during your opponent's turn. Alright, so the next card I want to talk about is actually this one I found out. It's called Diabrocken of the Ghost Light. So if you guys never seen this card before, I mean, I honestly haven't seen this card like before in my life. What it does is, if this card's in your hand as a quick effect, you can banish 1 fire monster that is face up on your field or graveyard, and then you can special summon this card. And if this card is special summoned, you can target 1 face-up card on the field, negate its effect until the end of the turn. And if this card is sent to the graveyard link material, you can set a quick play or a normal trap that was sent to the graveyard this turn. So the thing about this card is that it actually works decently well with Shara. So if you have a hand where like you have Shara plus say Kamura and this Diabrocken card in your hand, you can, discard the Shara, summon the Kamura, do a Dark Hole effect. And then if your opponent keeps trying to play, instead of adding this back to your hand when the Dark Hole effect happens, you can leave it in the graveyard So then you can have a quick effect, special summon this card by banishing the Shara from the graveyard. And then you get negate a monster effect when this card is special summoned. So this does work also with a card like Ash Blossom, because this card does not require you to have a Fiend or anything like that. All it requires you is to banish one fire monster from the field or graveyard. So even cards like Aruha and Charbara, once you kind of get your combo going, works with this guy. And I honestly see this guy being pretty decent for that reason. It is also level 6, so if you do summon it during your opponent's turn and it goes back to your turn, you could use it as material, so you can make something like High King Caesar. And honestly, I do feel like this card could be a very interesting tech card. It is not a hand trap that you can immediately use, because it does require you to have Ash Blossom and or Orga Shara in your hand in order to be activatable. And in all honesty, you're not gonna miss by managing a Shara. Like, this card is so not important in the deck, and you can always just search another one. So even if you banish it, you don't really care. Same thing for Ash Blossom; it's already being used. You don't care if you banish it. And I mean, the one that would hurt a little bit would be Charbara and Aruha, but even then, like, I think it's so worth it to have an additional negate and disruption, especially because it is a quick effect from the hand that you can summon. And being a level 6, it goes really well with King Caesar. And being a Fiend especially, you can still activate it once you activate an effect like Aruha, Shma, or even your Rakia during your opponent's turn. So this is definitely a good tech card that I am looking forward to maybe trying out in my future decks, because again, it does feel like it fits really well into the deck. The only time it doesn't is when you don't open any of your fire cards. But even if you go first, if you do open with this, you're most likely going to have a fire card in your graveyard, just because the deck is filled with them, and they're you main like combo starters, so you are most likely going to have them somewhere on the field or graveyard, so you can activate these cards, and then the effect to negate a monster effect. So I think it's really cool card. So maybe it's something that future Unchained players could utilize. So the next card I want to talk about is this other level 4, Hallo, the Spirit of Tricks. So this card, in all honesty, doesn't do anything. The main reason why I kind of want to showcase this card is not because of the first effect. The first effect is very like not needed, right? We're just gonna skip over that. If you normal or special summon it, you basically get to apply one of the effects. You either burn your opponent or you gain 100 attack for each Fiend in the graveyard. Sure, it could like just randomly win games by being too big, but the main effect we're looking at is this final effect. If this card is destroyed by battle or by card effects, you can send one monster your opponent controls to the graveyard. So the cool thing about this card is that it's non-targeting send to the graveyard. And the thing that works really well with this card is, as you might know by now, is Shara. Because Shara here, it has the effect that you can discard it, summon a Fiend from hand, and then destroy a card you control. And so during the turn 0 plays, right, you could do Shara into Dark Hole, Shara into one of your Unchained for an untargetable pop, or you can do Shara into Hallo here, so then you can do a non-targeting send to the graveyard, which is stronger than a non-targeting destruction from Abominable, because you don't have to discard a card to destroy, you can just send a card to the graveyard, or one monster to the graveyard. That's like, I guess, the only differences here. Like, this card has to send a monster, while Abominable could destroy spells and traps as well. But overall, I do think that Hallo is more or less, like I said, a tech card. I don't know if it's something that you are going to be playing in the main deck, or even in the side deck, but it is an interesting card because you have that ability to do now because of Shara. Shara opens up a lot of windows. It really does. And being a level 4, it's not the worst. You can use it to link summon, or you can use it for your rank 4s like a Silent Knight to go into the Fiendsmith combo. Or again, you can use it to just kill your opponent, because this card could just end games in case you're short of damage or short of life points. You don't want to attack, so you want to burn instead. So yeah, this card is very interesting. You know, it works decently well with the deck, again, especially with Shard during your opponent's turn during turn 0. So you don't have to utilize your Unchains in case you have them. You're like, man, I only have one starter, but I have this card in my hand, so maybe I could send Shara to the graveyard to summon Hallo instead. You know, that works really well because then you get a free removal and you still get to keep your combo, your one card combo, for example. So that is an option. You know, that is definitely a very interesting card. I do want to give this as like all 3 of these cards, like Emissary, Hallo, and Diabrocken, a lot more testing because I do believe they are very interesting. And, you know, kind of hoping to see if people take these guys in the main decks with the turn 0 build here. The next set of cards I want to talk about is Nibiru. So a lot of you who are just picking up Unchained may not know this, but Nibiru has a very cool interaction with Unchained, and very specifically with Rakia. So back in the day, a very popular thing to do is to kind of leave the field with one Rakia face up on the field, because what you can do during your opponent's turn, say is like your opponent starts to combo off, you utilize all your interruptions, so they're just going off, right? At any point during their combo after the 5th summon, what you can do is you can activate the effect of Nibiru from the hand, and then immediately after that, you know, once your opponent goes through their responses, you can then activate a card like Rakia as a quick effect. Because Rakia has the quick effect that you can target one card on the field, destroy it, and then if you do, and then you cannot special summon monster for the rest of the turn, except for fiend monsters. So when you do this 2-card combo here, what ends up happening is you get to first activate the Rakia effect, destroy any card you control, and then whatever happens with your opponent, then you activate Nibiru, or Resolution of Nibiru. You get to tribute all monsters on the field, but you don't get to summon the rock, because you are now locked into fiends. And in Yu-Gi-Oh!, once you activate a card effect, you do as much of the card as you can in the text. And for Nibiru here, what happens first is you tribute as many monsters that are face up on the field as possible first, and then you special summon him, and then you give him a token, you know, based on the stacks of the cards. And in here, because you activate it as, you know, Chain Link 1 or whatever, you get to tribute all cards on the field, but you don't give your opponent a token, and you get to keep the Nibiru in your hand, so you can utilize it on a future turn. But the only problem with Nibiru and this version of the deck is the confliction with Dominance Impulse. If I could, I would try running 1 Nibiru, or maybe even 2 Nibirus, just so I can keep doing that combo against different combo players. But because of Dominance Impulse, I do think this card is stronger than a Nibiru could. And I think just the value of this is just too much to let go. So it is something to think about though. If you are playing like a version that doesn't play the Dominance Impulse, instead of playing them, you can play the Triple Nibiru, and you're gonna see yourself having a lot of success, because back in the day that was like almost like a game ender, right? You pop like one of your set spells and traps, then you Nibiru, then you pop that, right? And then you get to summon a monster for free while not having your opponent have anything on board. They don't have a token, they don't have anything, and you get to keep Nibiru for like the following turns as well. So that's it for that one. And now we're gonna talk about these 2 cards, Dark Spirit of Malice and Dark Spirit of Banishment. So back in the day when Unchained was first announced and, you know, first revealed, these 2 cards were actually played in the deck, if you believe it or not. They're very interesting, right? So let's go ahead and just talk about the effects and kind of like what they do in the deck. So the first card here we're gonna talk is Banishment, Dark Spirit of the Banishment. So the TLDR of this card is that when your opponent declares an attack, at the start of the damage step, so this is during the damage step, that's very important, you can send this card to the graveyard, and then you can target a level 8 fiend from the graveyard, so then you can special summon that card. Effects are negated, but then your opponent has to attack that card you just summoned. And then if a level 8 fiend monster is sent to the graveyard, while this card's in the graveyard, except during the damage step, so you kind of like loop it in the same damage step, you get to add this card to the hand instead. You get to add this card to the hand, period. And then let's go ahead and talk about this next card, and then we'll really talk about them. We'll dive into it. So Dark Spirit of Malice has the effect that when your opponent activates a card or effect, you get to send this card from the hand to the graveyard, or field to the graveyard. So you can target a level 8 fiend in the graveyard to special summon it, effects are negated, And same conditions here. If a level 8 Fiend gets sent to the graveyard, you get to add this card from the graveyard to the hand. So, these two cards were really widely played when Unchained was still very, young. When we only had the Blue Dog as the main deck monster, for example, people were playing both of these cards. And then when Abominable came out, people were mostly just playing the Spirit of Banishment. And these two cards, I can see them making a bit of a comeback, just because their effects are still really good, and because of the new card Kamura here. Because Kamura has the effect, if this card is destroyed by card effect, you can destroy all monsters on the field. So you can summon this card from the graveyard with one of these effects, and then your opponent has to really think about, like, how am I going to get rid of this card without triggering its secondary effect to do a Dark Hole effect. And you can even utilize it with like Abominable still during the damage step with Banishment, so your opponent crashes into it and either they both get killed if they summon, like, say, a Baron or something, or they summon a weaker monster than 3000, because 3000 is a pretty big number. Not a whole lot of cards could reach that or even higher without, additional effects. So a lot of the times you are gonna crash with your opponent with this too. But Dark Spirit or Malice, kind of like with the same line here, you can utilize it to kind of keep looping both of these cards. You can only do it once with Abominable, because this guy's restricted to only being summoned once per turn. But this guy you can summon him multiple times, which is great, right? And if you have like card effects like Escape, for example, or Rakia, or even your Shabara in your hand, you can proc its Dark Hole effect at any point. Because of a card like Malice, you can just kind of like keep looping them, right? Like you discard Malice, summon Kamura, then you pop it with like Shabara, you do a Dark Hole effect, you activate the effect of Malice that gets added to the hand. So next turn you have the same thing, you discard Malice to summon Kamura and kind of have that going in a circle, right? You never lose out on advantages, you never lose out on resources. And that's kind of like both of these cards ended up doing in the Unchained deck. They made resource loop. And now, we have the reincarnation, so those cards go back into the deck. But these cards really do play with the graveyard really nicely, honestly. There's been so many times where when I play Banishment, I just won games because my opponents did not know what to do, like they attack with like, I don't know, like a 2500 attacker, and then I summon Abominable with Banishment, damage step, you can't activate many cards at this point, then they get destroyed, and now I have the 3000 beater on board that they just can't out. It's definitely cards to look into now that the deck has more going for it, right? They're not bad cards at all, they just create this loop that you can just keep playing with, and your opponent has to like double guess, like, okay, what can I do against this card, what can I do against this? If he has this, then is it worth it if I don't stop this? Like, now you're playing with their minds, right? Like, you're kind of like elevating the technical play of the match. And both of these cards do a great job at doing that. And it's kind of like a bit of an issue too when I talk about technical play here, right? Because it does mean that you need to understand the rulings behind these two cards, and you need to also understand when to activate them to be the most successful or the most optimal time for those cards to be activated. Because they both are relying on your opponent. They're also very passive in that sense, where Dark Malice can only be activating when your opponent's activated card or effect, which, most likely they will. But Banishment only triggers when your opponent declares an attack. So you just kind of have to think about this card if you want to use them or not in that sense, right? And, being, all fiends here, by the way, just letting you know, they're all fiends here, the new Emissary, Hallo, and Diabrocken. You can send them to the graveyard using Fiendsman's Rhino, and you can add them to your hand afterwards with one of your link monsters. It's actually pretty crazy, it's pretty good in that sense. But Banishment and Malice here, though, as long as you send them to the graveyard and you send a level 8 later on, they just get right added back to your hand, so you don't have to worry about utilizing like Soul of Rage or Soul of Anguish in order for you to get them back. So that's it for those particular cards. Now I kind of want to talk a little bit more on the spell and trap side. This is going to be more of a quicker discussion because I don't have a whole lot to say about them. So there's Dull Hammer to begin with. So Dull Hammer here, for those of you who don't know, has a pretty interesting effects, right? You can target one monster you control, destroy it, and if you do, you draw 2 cards. And then you can change the battle position on one monster your opponent controls. That one doesn't really matter. But then if the monster special summon from the graveyard while you have this in the graveyard, you get to add this card to your hand, and you can only use each effect once per turn. And this card sounds really good in paper, right? On paper. Uh, Especially here in Unchained, because you get to target one of your Unchained monsters. Especially if, say, you get Ash on it. Say you summon your Ogre Shma, it gets Ash, and you're like, okay, I activate Dull Hammer, pop it, draw 2 cards, and then you summon one from the deck with Ogre Shma, right? Like, you just go +2 basically in that interaction there. And then later down the line, when you summon a Unchained from the graveyard with Lord Yama, you get to add it back to your hands. You have an additional draw 2 during your next turn. So this card sounds good, really good on paper. But I think the biggest issue with a card like this is that it's not searchable. And that's like a bit of a big problem. Because when you are looking at your non-engines, you want it to do, I feel like, one or two things. You want them to use to disrupt your opponent, or you want them to be used to destroy your opponent's field. A card that's very similar to this would be Triple Tactics, where it has a very similar, well, I wouldn't say similar condition, but it has a similar effect where you can just draw 2 cards. But the fact here is that you also have 2 other alternative effects. Take control of one of your opponent's monsters, or look at your opponent's hand and then shuffle one from their hand to the deck. And having that ability, like, I know honestly, anytime I play Triple Tactics, I think out of every single duel that I played over the last year, maybe even 2 years, I've only done the draw 2 like once. I like never do the draw 2 at all with this card, because a lot of the times you have more extenders in your hand. You're like, okay, I don't need to draw 2 more cards because my extenders in my hand are going to get me to that full board anyways. So instead, I want to either take one of your opponent's monsters when I'm going second, so I can break the boards even easier, and then use that monster for like material for whatever I need, or I just look into your hand if I'm going first and get rid of a engine card that you have, right? Like, so that way the board I make, you're just gonna lose to it. A card like Dull Hammer doesn't give you that ability to do as well. It just draws you 2 cards and destroy a card on the field, and it is recyclable because you get it again essentially for next turn. But it is one of those cards, like, it doesn't really do anything more than draw 2. And the draw 2 could be anything, right? It could be more engine, it could be non-engine. It's a toss-up. And a lot of the times, if I want to play a card that lets me draw cards, I'm going to play Triple Tactics, because what if I don't want to draw cards? What if I want to look at my opponent's hand? What if I want to take one of your monsters? I'll take that over the draw 2 almost any day of the week. And I do believe a card like this, you can play it and you can try it out for yourself. Maybe it works really well for you, but for me, I see it as more of a non-needed type of card. It's one of those cards that really works when I get hand trapped, when the deck is already really good at playing through hand traps, or when I'm like, okay, I need to draw 2 because I just have to draw 2, right? Like something I'll in the game state is making me want to draw instead of like, say, for Triple Tactics, do one of the other 2 good effects. But yeah, that's just like a quick little thing there. Dull Hammer, you can use it, go ahead. If not, I don't blame you. I'm not gonna use this card. I don't think it's needed in the Unchained deck at all. And then the next card here I want to talk about is Cursed Paper Retribution. So this is a new card that got announced, I want to say last week, from the making of this video. And this card here has a very interesting effect, because this kind of came out with 2 other cards. They got announced, I should say, with 2 other cards that are like indirect support to Tunes. And what was the other card? Was it Witchcrafter? I forgot what the other archetype was. It was like a Spellcaster archetype that isn't really doing all that good. But this is supposed to be the Unchained, indirect support. So what did this do? So first of all, you could target one monster you control, and when face up your opponent's control, you can destroy your own monster, and if you do, you can negate the effect of that opponent's card until the end of the turn. And then if this set card is sent to the graveyard, you can target a face-up card your opponent controls and negate it. So this card is actually very, very interesting. It is one of those cards that I think will do a lot better in the TCG because of side decking. Because a card like this is generic, first of all, so you can add it to any deck. But because it has the ability to negate cards like Dark Ruler No More. It has Harpy Feather Duster. Cards like Evenly Match, right? It kills those cards that, you know, go second decks and want to utilize to break your boards. And Unchained here, the only real card that kind of kills it are cards like Evenly Match, right? And even Dark Ruler No More, you know, it's pretty difficult because all your cards are negated, so you have to utilize your trap card, your non-engine. And a lot of the time, you may only have the Abominable Chambers or Escape from the Unchained, right? Like, it becomes tricky, just kind of depending on the game state and what deck you're playing against. But a card like this can make that, you know, a non-issue. You cannot search this, which is the only downside to it. But I believe, again, in the TCG, if you are going first, main decking 3 of this card is not a bad idea. I do believe in the TCG this will be more played in the Unchained deck. Not in Master Duel, because Master Duel you don't know if you're going first or second, and going second this card just doesn't do that good. But going first, most definitely you can utilize a card like this to prevent the board breaker cards. Even cards like Droplets, right, or Crown, right? Like, there's so many things like this card just says no to, and you want that because there are cards that Unchained does not want to play through, right? Like, again, playing through an Evenly or a Dark Ruler No More is pretty bad. So this card here will do a lot better in the TCG for that reason. So if you are gonna play this deck in the TCG, I do recommend playing Curse Paper Retribution once it comes out. And yeah, like, I cannot say any more than that. Like, this card is really good. I really wish I could even play it in Master Duel, but again, it doesn't work that way. So now we're gonna go ahead and talk about the last couple cards here that I have. Oh, actually, before that, let me give a quick word on Finished Rhino here. If anybody who's listening to this video right now has a way to send Finished Rhino from the deck to the graveyard without breaking the Unchained like line, and while using like an extra deck card or something, like, I want to know how. Because this card here could be like a big opener when it comes down to the things that you can do in Unchained. Like, if I could have a way to send this from the deck to the graveyard, like, I was thinking of using Cherubini, but then I realized, oh man, I lock myself into Fiends too easily in Unchained now. And if I summon it with Tour Guide, I'm sending to the graveyard Shabara, and that kind of defeat the purpose of sending any other card with Finished Rhino, because there are combos that I'm about to kind of showcase that would benefit if we can send Finished Rhino for the deck to the graveyard, utilizing like non-engine cards, utilizing extra deck cards as well. And if anybody out there could find out a way to summon Finished Rhino from deck to graveyard without, even through searching with different card effects, I don't care, I just want to know how. I want to know, because if I could figure that out, I could come up with 2 other combos that are just like fantastic. They're like great, they're amazing. But the problem here is, again, there's no easy way to send Finished Rhino from deck to graveyard that I have tried to figure out. So if you guys know any way to do so without utilizing your normal summon, maybe trying to get Cherubini on board without utilizing your Unchained card, like, that's gonna be crazy, right? Because then at that point we're just adding more cards in the main deck. And even if you have like a Foolish Burial that's only 1 card out of the entire deck, like, it's hard. But if anybody has like any Fiend out there, like any card that combos with other Fiend archetypes that could send Finished Rhino to Warrior to the graveyard, I would like to know. So, in any case, that's it for that one. And now we're gonna go ahead and talk about these last 2 engines. Now we're going into the engines, and we're no longer talking about text. Okay then, so let's go ahead and get started talking about this. So, the first card engine we want to talk about here is Perfomapal Gertrude and Perfomapal Fire Rainbow Magician. So, these 2 cards here, if you guys did not know kind of how Fire Rainbow Magician works, essentially this card has a floodgate effect when it's set in the pendulum scale. So let's go ahead and read that real fast. So you cannot pendulum summon except from the extra deck, non-issue. This effect cannot be negated. Each player applies one of these effects based on the number of set cards in their spells and trap zone. If you control 0, then all monsters they control cannot attack or activate their effects, and if you control 4 or more, then the attack of all monsters they control becomes double their original attack. So, Perfomapal 5 Rainbow Magicians here has been played in different formats as a floodgate. It's not the best floodgate out there, but it is something that this deck could actually utilize quite well. It really depends a lot on whether or not you're going first or second, or if you have any spells and traps. But the main thing that this would work really well in this deck is because of a card like Gertrude here. So Gertrude has the effect that if this card is destroyed, you can place one Perfomapal Pendulum monster from your deck in your Pendulum zone, except itself. So, and this card's a Fiend, which is very important because it combos with Ogre Shara here. So if you want to add a card like this into the deck as an engine, you'll add 3 Gertrude and then 1 5 Rainbow Magician. So then during your opponent's turn, during turn 0, you could basically immediately when your opponent starts, activate Ogre Shara, special summon the Gertrude from hand, destroy it, which then will set 5 Rainbow Magician from the deck. So let's go ahead and kind of showcase a little bit of that combo here. Double check that is the correct settings. Yep. So what we can do here is we can say activate. Let's go ahead and say no to that one. We're gonna go ahead and special summon. We can go ahead and pop it, which then is gonna trigger the effect because it got destroyed, and we're gonna go ahead and set our 5 Rainbow Magician from that deck. And this could be done during our opponent's turn, during turn 0. And if you do it during your own turn, you can just do like full combo, then do the Ogre Shara combo with this, so you can have this on board with your spells and traps set already on field. And to me, that seems very powerful because now your opponent has to set a spell or trap in order for them to play the game. And if you have a card like Escape of the Unchained, you can just destroy that set card as soon as they set it. So then your opponent cannot activate any monster effects for the turn. So this little engine would work really well if we can have Rhino be sent from the deck to the graveyard in some way, because then you can send Gertrude to the graveyard, and then you can add the Shara back and Gertrude when you destroy something like Rage, and then you can activate the effect as soon as you're done with your full combo. But in this scenario here, we would be playing like let's see here, you will be playing like triple Gertrude, like I've mentioned before, with the 5 Rainbow Magician in your deck. So that way you have more options to play with Shara, not just the Unchained cards. The only issue with a combo or an engine like this is that you're relying on drawing Gertrude plus Shara in your hand, and even if you go first, you can utilize it. That's totally fine. Even if you open your brick, it doesn't matter. You can just activate your brick unless you're going second. But the thing that really kind of makes this a bit of an issue too is that this is not really a hand trap at all. It's just more space in your main deck, and this deck already kind of struggles with it. But it is something that you can use as a win card. Literally on its own is a win condition, because there are decks out there that would struggle with it, right? Like a lot of the monster pile decks, what are they called again? Like your Block Dragon type of decks, right? Your Emancipator type of decks. Those kind of decks would just lose to this on the spot. And different decks too that utilize more monsters, like I believe your Canine, for example. If you activate this right away, your Canine Vanquish Soul, my bad. Yeah, they have 9 spells and traps in total, right? So most of the time their whole hand is going to be monsters. So by activating this effect, they just lose because they can't activate anything anymore. So yeah, a combo like this could just be a game winner, depending on the matchup. Obviously, there are decks that do play Imperm, right? And even the Dominance cards. So those players would just have to set those cards, and then they can actually play the game. But I do believe something like this, could be utilized, especially in the TCG. In Master Duel, surprisingly, it's a bit of a flip on that one, I think, but I am willing to give it a shot once it comes out in Master Duel, because to me it just seems so silly to have something like Shara into Gentrude, into Rainbow Magician, and then your opponent's like, well, I can't play anymore. Yeah, I can't even hand trap. They can't do any of those because of Shara. So that is definitely an engine that if you guys want to give it a try, go ahead and try it out. It seems really degenerate, and we'll see how that works. Maybe this will become like the meta play at some point. But in any case, so that's it for like that little engine. And then the final engine I want to talk here about is the Yubel engine. So this is not like a Yubel deck, right? Like this is far from it. This is utilizing Yubel as a small engine, and the things we need here are one of each. Well, I wouldn't say one of each. Let me go ahead and get another Spirit of Yubel or whatever it's called. Another what are they? Yeah, Spirit of Yubel. Like we want 3 Spirit of Yubel, 1 Yubel, 1 Terror Incarnate, and then you also want to have your one what is it called again? A Phantom of Yubel. So this is another engine that you can also utilize with Ogre Shara. So this one's a little bit different because it is not necessarily like a turn 0 combo. It's more of like a turn 1 type of combo, but you could play it, during turn 0. Because the main thing you want to do here is by utilizing both of these cards, you can activate Ogre Shara here, summoning the Yubel, popping the Yubel, which then triggers the effect to summon, Yubel from deck. And then from here you can just summon your your Phantom of Yubel by shuffling back both of those cards into the deck. So now you have an Omni Negate essentially, or Monster Negate I think I should say. So you can kind of like play around like your opponent's hand traps, like Nibiru if you're ever wondering, or even holding the Ash for whatever reason. Now you have a way to negate while still doing your 1-card combo if you have like the way to get it, which this deck does have a lot of ways to search the 1-card combo. You have your 6 copies here with Prison and Ogre Shara, plus you're up to another 3 copies with Reincarnation, right? So that is a play that you can utilize. And then when you do this turn 0, you want to do it like maybe later down the line after your opponent activates some, maybe they don't have the greatest of turn or whatever, because this is more of a turn 1 sort of play. And you can even say they try to threaten the Yubel by banishing it with something like SP Little Knight. If you have a card like Shara in your hand, Sharbara, you can just, quick effect pop it, summon the Sharbara, and then you can summon Terror of Incarnate from the deck. There's just ways here that you can kind of play around that sort of thing, but this is more of like a turn 1 sort of play, where you can have that negate on board, and then you can do your combo and have, your King Caesar with your Soul of Rage, with your Lord Yama on board, with your set spells and traps. Like you can kind of explode, honestly, by just having, these additional cards in your hand. But, same problem as the previous engine here, or yeah, this doesn't really, it just adds more cards to the main deck, so you have less cards to kind of play test with. A lot less cards for non-engine. You have less hand traps, and that's not something I want to see. I want to see more hand traps. I want to see more things to utilize to interrupt my opponent with. But I do know a lot of people like Yubel, and well, you could just make a dedicated, Yubel Unchained version of the deck by killing off like most of the Unchains. This is, supposed to be a Unchained deck, like talking about the tech cards of what you can do with mostly Unchained and some tech cards or engines. So this is something that you can utilize. I wouldn't think is the best to utilize, but same thing as with Gentrude here. If there's any way to send Phoenix Rhino to the graveyard, you can just play the minimum package here of 1/1/1. Send it to the graveyard from the deck, send Spirit of Yubel, and then you can add it to the hand by utilizing something like Soul of Rage or Anguish, and then Shara is going to get added to your hand automatically, and then do what we just showcased, right, with the 2 cards, and so you can have an additional disruption during your opponent's turn. But again, that requires us to have Phoenix Rhino into the graveyard by not utilizing by trying in some ways to get him into the graveyard. Again, if anybody knows how to do that, I would love it to know how you did it, because I really want finished Rhino be sent from deck to graveyard, so I can kind of make these engines be a lot more worthwhile running into the main deck. But yes, that's basically it, and that's kind of like all I have for you guys for today. I hope you did enjoy this video. I hope you guys did enjoy kind of me talking and rambling through kind of like how just kind of like, yeah, rambling through my thoughts and process, because I do know I love this deck and I kind of wanted to see it do a lot better, and I think it is kind of like our job to do that, since the OCG, I do think they're kind of like not playing the deck right. I really don't think so. And obviously a lot of the ban lists do kind of come into play because they have a different, you know, meta game, they have different ban lists, they have different card pool as well. So it could just be that, you know, Unchained just doesn't do well over there. But here in the TCG and even Master Duel, you could do really, really well. I'm actually really looking forward to it, because this is one of my favorite decks of all time. And I hope that anybody who's watching this, you know, could also, you know, put on in the comments below different tech cards they might have found out. What is your favorite tech card that I showcased here today? Because honestly, to me, this card seems to be like the one with the biggest potential, as well as the spirits. I think those would be like, I think, the most sought after once I actually get the cards. I want to really play test with those. And so I kind of want to have you guys' opinions on, you know, what do you think? You know, do you like this? Do you not like this? What are other tech cards you guys are playing? I know the Vistials, I mentioned this in my in other videos before. Like, these are also really good to play. They're just like meta dependent, whether or not your opponent is playing light or darks. Right now, I think they're really good because, you know, they have branded and cool tunes that all utilize light and dark monsters. So these are actually really good in the main deck right now, if you are playing like an Unchained deck, right? So let's just go ahead and just kind of fill this up. You know, like, you can just fill this up with like a bunch of cards, maybe even one-ups. But there's a lot of things that you could utilize with Shara here. This card is very underrated, honestly. The more I'm like playtesting with it, the more I'm like theory crafting. I do think this card is underrated, because when I first saw it and everybody else first see it, they don't really think too highly of it. They see the Darkhold play, but that's really about it. They see the Untargetable Destruction, but that's really about it. They don't see it as a combo piece. They don't see it as like a way to get different engines going, you know, like the Gen through into the Fire Emblem Magician. Like, and I think that that's something that we need to kind of learn as a community. You know, which one works best, what works better. And I do want you guys to hopefully take something out of this. And I'm hoping that in the near future, you know, once this card do come out, you know, I get to showcase combo videos. I get to showcase, especially like Master Duel, because that'll be the easiest thing for me to record and showcase what the deck could actually do. I'll try to make it to Master 1 with Unchained once the cards do come out. But anyways, I do hope you guys have a great day. I hope you guys learned something from this. Again, comment in the comment section. Tell me what your favorite tech card I mentioned. Tell me what other tech cards you have found that works well for you. Go ahead and show me some criticism, because I'm still kind of learning how to do this whole thing. I'm just kind of like rambling about half of the time, I feel like. But I do hope you guys did, at the very least, took something out of these videos. And with that, I'll go ahead and end the video now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys another time. Take care.